he must have passed away young, or fairly young, because according to that story that explains his name, he was just a little baby, and the Buddha was already a distinguished teacher. So he would have been at least 35 years younger than the Buddha, probably even more years, let us just say 40, 45 years younger than the Buddha, and yet he passes away while the Buddha is still alive. Okay, so after he creates this gross body and pays homage to the Buddha, then the Buddha asks him, do those teachings that you could recall in the past when you were a human being come back to you now? And then he says, those teachings that I could recall in the past when I was a human being come back to me now. I can recall them now. And those teachings that I could not recall in the past when I was a human being come back to me now. And then he says that, this is interesting, he says that he's constantly hemmed in by young devas, and young devas, he says, come to me even from a distance thinking that they will hear the Dhamma from the young deva Hataka. So apparently, in the deva world, there are those devas who had been learned as human beings, when they were human beings, will retain their memory of the Dhamma and can teach the Dhamma in the deva world. Now, sometimes there's a widespread belief that there's no Dhamma known in the deva world, that to hear the Dhamma you have to be a human being. But that doesn't seem to be true. Okay, then the rest of the sutta are not so consequential. So Hataka just goes on to say that when he died, he says, I was insatiable and unquenchable in three things. Insatiable and unquenchable in seeing the Buddha, insatiable in hearing the Dhamma, and insatiable in attending upon or serving the Sangha. And then he restates this in the first verse, I could never get enough of seeing the Blessed One, hearing the good Dhamma, and attending on the Sangha. Then he says, training in the higher virtuous behavior, adi, the word is adi sila, I rejoiced in hearing the good Dhamma. Hataka has gone to rebirth in Aviha. Now he mentions the name of the realm. Not having gotten enough of these three things. So when he says training in the higher virtuous behavior, the commentary explains, like, what is the higher virtuous behavior? Usually this word is explained in the suttas in relation to the monastic training, as observing the precepts of the monastic life. But Hataka is a lay follower, yet he uses the word adi sila, the higher virtuous behavior. So the commentary says that this is the 10 kinds of wholesome conduct. So it's not killing, not stealing, no sexual misconduct, not lying, not speaking divisive speech, divisive words, or malicious words, not uttering harsh speech, not engaging in gossip, then not nurturing covetous thoughts, not nurturing thoughts of ill will, and holding right view. And then he says, I rejoiced in hearing the good Dhamma. Then he says, I have gone to rebirth in Aviha, not having gotten enough of those three things. So since he didn't get enough of these three things, this shows that there's still some craving in him. So this would be, probably we'd call this a Dhamma tanha or Dhamma raga. So it's a craving for the Dhamma, a yearning for the Dhamma. And because of that, that would have been the obstacle, I think, that prevented him from reaching the fourth stage of arhatship. And yet through that craving or attachment to the Dhamma, it was a wholesome kind of craving that led him to rebirth in the pure abodes. Okay, so that takes us through this sutta. So any questions that arise out of this sutta? Yes, Mano, and if we have the wireless mic.
Thank you, Bhante. Is there a reason why Hataka and Chitta did not get ordained and remained lay disciples?
It's an interesting question, and I don't know the reason. Yeah, I just don't know the reason, and haven't come across that explanation anyplace.
I'm not sure if I remember this correctly, but wasn't there some background to Chitta where he was taking care of his parents and that was the reason, or maybe I'm mixing him up with someone else?
I don't remember anything about Chitta taking care of his parents.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
There is somebody, but I don't recall that as applying to Chitta. Oh, I think that's, yeah, now I know who that is. That is in the Majjhima Nikaya Gatikara. He's actually the potter, not under Gautama Buddha, but under the previous Buddha, Kashyapa Buddha. His parents are blind, and he looks after his parents.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah.
Bhante, among the 5 feathers that a non-returner has not eliminated, and that an arahant eliminated, which one does Dhamma tanha belong to?
It doesn't actually fit amongst the fetters. It's just, it just seems to be a quality that there is actually there is an expression, Dhamma raga, Dhamma nandi, attachment to the Dhamma and delight in the Dhamma, which occurs we find it in Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 64. There's a passage which speaks about how a meditator contemplates the 5 aggregates from 11 angles as being impermanent, suffering, like a disease, like a boil, like an affliction, empty, non-self, or 4 other qualities mentioned. And then it says that while he's contemplating this, if he is steady and firm in this, then he attains the destruction of the asavas. In other words, he attains arhatship. But if there is still some Dhamma raga, Dhamma nandi, some attachment to the Dhamma, some delight in the Dhamma, then he destroys the 5 lower fetters and becomes a non-returner. So that a subtle attachment to the Dhamma, delight in the Dhamma, even though it doesn't enter into the 10 fetters, but it's still a quality that obstructs the attainment of the final stage. Yes,
So, since he is a non-returner now,
Yeah.
so in this last life, he will eventually become a arahant.
Yeah.
So, so in that world, he still can learn something, or does he need to do anything to achieve the final arahant?
I think he has to continue with the practice of samadhi and panya, concentration and insight, and bring them together to the point where they eliminate the remaining fetters.
Bande, I'm puzzled by the Sanghavatu.
Yeah.
It's definitely not world transcending practice.
Oh, definitely not.
Right,
Yeah.
it's a worldly practice.
Yeah.
But what does this practice lead to?
You mean what is the benefit of the practice?
Mm-hmm. In terms of the final goal?
Yeah. I think this is the practice which would come under the heading of, let us say, there are the two kinds of goods, one's own good and the good of others. So this practice is not directly connected with the achievement of one's own good, but of promoting the good of others. So this is attracting a retinue, not for the purpose of becoming, famous and popular in a worldly sense, but the aim, the ultimate aim, is to lead others into the Dhamma. And so this is a means of, sort of an indirect means of guiding others to the fulfillment of their benefit, or of benefiting others.
I'm puzzled because this is one of the two main practices that the Mahayana practitioners must do.
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
more important than anything else. But I don't understand in a Theravada tradition, what does it, is helping others that important in terms of our own liberation?
Well, the Buddha speaks about the two kinds of goods, one's own good and the good of others, and then he speaks about people who aim at different goods amongst these. So there's one who aims at his own good but not the good of others, one who aims at the good of others but not at his own good, and the one who aims at the good of both. And then the Buddha, amongst these, he praises as the one who is the best. He uses a series of words. The best, the supreme, the most excellent, the foremost is the one who aims at his or her own good and the good of others. And so this particular set of practices would come under the heading of how to bring benefit to others. And then, as you mentioned, even though the Buddha, the Nikayas mention these qualities in a few places, but they aren't developed in great detail. But one finds that in the Mahayana, they become sort of picked up and then elaborated and dealt with much more extensively. I think along with the 6 paramitas, and then the 4 brahmaviharas and the 4 sanghavatus, the essential practices for a bodhisattva aspirant. Okay, let us maybe move on. I'm going to try to pick up the interesting suttas. Okay, the next one, really the theme is pretty simply, even in a dramatic setting, but the theme is that of avoiding wrong thoughts or wrong mental states, which are here called pollution. And so we just have simply longing is a pollution, ill will is a pollution, or longing is the pollution, ill will is the stench, and bad, unwholesome thoughts are the flies, filling in that simile. So you could read this at your leisure, but we'll just pass on to the next sutta. And this one is somewhat puzzling, and you might find it initially a little bit offensive, but we'll read it together. Okay, in this sutta, the Venerable Anuruddha comes to the Buddha and then tells him, well, first, amongst all of the monk disciples of the Buddha, Anuruddha was the disciple who excelled in the Dibbachakkhu, the divine eye. So the divine eye is a particular quality by means of which one could see other realms of existence, the heavens, the hell realms, the realm of ghosts, and one could see the working of karma. One could see beings passing away from one realm and taking rebirth elsewhere. And one will understand how beings pass on in accordance with their karma. Okay, so now Anuruddha comes to the Buddha and says that with the divine eye, which is purified and superior to human vision, I see that women, with the breakup of the body after death, are mostly reborn. I told you this is a bit offensive, are mostly reborn in the plane of misery in a bad destination, in the lower world, in hell. Okay, so if you just take that statement at face value, and you're a woman, you think, oh my God, what kind of destiny do I have heading ahead of me? Okay, but this is, when I saw this, preparing for the class today, I remembered another sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, and I was hoping to be able to show that, but the computer has failed me. There's a chapter in a little chapter in the Anguttara Nikaya, chapter 39. It's called Matugama Sangyutta, that is, discourses concerning women. And in that sutta, the Buddha says that women who possess three qualities are for the most part reborn in the plane of misery, in the bad destination, in the lower world, in hell. And so it's the three qualities that women who have these three qualities are mostly reborn in the lower world, according to that sutta. It's not a general statement that women are mostly reborn there, but it's the three qualities that lead to the lower realm. And I would, it seems, I was just about to say that it would seem that anyone who has these three, the mind obsessed by these three qualities, it's not simply having them, but having the mind obsessed by these three qualities would be reborn in the lower realm. And it's just that since these discourses are given in that chapter in relation to women, so it mentions in the case of women, but it seems that anyone who has them would be disposed to the lower realm. Yeah, so what I was going to say is, we have to remember that the texts are transmitted orally, for 300, 400 years. And so it's possible that in the course of oral transmission, certain distortions get introduced. Things get forgotten, left out. So my supposition is that this sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya originally read like that sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, that Anuruddha would be saying that I see that women whose minds are obsessed by three qualities with the breakup of the body after death are mostly reborn in the plane of misery. And then somehow, and maybe this was a bias of the male contingent responsible for transmitting the Anguttara Nikaya, dropped out with minds obsessed by three qualities, and then just made it a broad generalization applying to all women. Okay, so anyway, in fact, the next question, what qualities does a woman possess, seems to follow from a statement that would say that women whose minds are obsessed by three qualities. Okay, so what are the three qualities? Okay, so then, oh, I'm sorry. Anuruddha is asking the Buddha, what qualities does a woman possess on account of which she has been reborn in the lower world? And then the Buddha says that when she possesses three qualities, she's reborn in the lower world. So what are the three qualities? Here in the morning, a woman dwells at home with a mind obsessed by the stain of miserliness. And why does this apply in the morning? Because it's, what? Not for the family, not for the husband. Somebody said it in the back. It's a little bit like a promotion, like a promotion campaign for supporting the monastic order. Like a little bit of warning, you better have some food prepared in the morning to offer for the monks. That's the time when the monks go on alms round. Okay, so that's the stain of miserliness is active in the morning. So when the monks are coming on alms round, they come to this woman's house and she'll say, oh, I don't have anything prepared. Or maybe she'll give each of them a little banana. Whereas the other houses, the women have prepared bowl of rice and various cooked dishes, as well as some fruits. Okay, at midday, she dwells at home with a mind obsessed by envy. Is there a special reason why envy would be more operative in the middle of the day? It could be. It could be. I don't have an answer to this in my mind. Anyway, for some reason, envy is especially operative at the middle of the day. And then in the evening, she dwells at home with a mind obsessed by sensual lust. And probably this is indicating maybe times when her husband is away, and then she has the sensual lust for other men. And then that leads her to commit adultery. I have to say, even with those words, this statement is a bit strong for my understanding. It would have to lead, in my view, to some kind of moral transgressions, not just the states of mind. Okay, we'll take the other Anuruddha Sutta, and then we could see if there's any questions. So this is Anuruddha Sutta number 2. This is an interesting one. Apparently, Anuruddha and Sariputta are off someplace practicing meditation together. And at this point, it's evident that Sariputta is already an arahat, but Anuruddha not yet. But Anuruddha has developed through his mastery over the jhanas. He's attained the Dibbachakkhu, the divine eye. So but he's failing to attain arahatship. And so he comes to Sariputta and he tells Sariputta, he says, with the divine eye, which is purified and superhuman, I survey a 1,000-fold world system. Then energy is aroused in me without slackening. My mindfulness is established without confusion. My body is tranquil without disturbance. My mind is concentrated and one-pointed, yet my mind is still not liberated from the asavas, from the taints. Okay, so Sariputta, in a sense, he's asking Sariputta implicitly, what is the obstacle that I'm facing? What are my barriers? Why can't I make that final breakthrough? And Sariputta is able to sort of size up the situation. And then he tells Anuruddha, he says, when you think that with the divine eye I can survey 1,000 world systems, that is your mana, your conceit. When you think my energy is aroused without slackening, even though he says my mind is concentrated and one-pointed, but Sariputta says that is your uddhacca, that's your restlessness. And then when you think my mind is still not liberated from the taints, that is your, here the translation is remorse, but the Pali word is kukucha, which is like maybe regret is better than remorse. Remorse is too strong. That is your regret, or that is your worry. Okay, so we have here actually 3 qualities that are obstructing Anuruddha, who's probably by this time, he's probably at least a Sotapanna, maybe. Yeah, probably at least a Sotapanna. So we have conceit, a very subtle conceit. It's not like the gross conceit that ordinary people have, but his mind is a bit puffed up because he's able to develop very extensively the divine eye. And this a subtle kind of restlessness, probably because he has an excess of energy, not sufficiently balanced by samadhi. Even though the text says, my mind is concentrated and one-pointed. And then there's this regret, kukucha, for not having attained liberation. And so Sariputta then tells him, it would be good if you would abandon those 3 qualities and stop worrying about them, but instead direct your mind to the amata dhatu, to the deathless element, to nibbana. Okay, so then Anuruddha abandoned those 3 qualities, not by eradication, but I guess he just stopped giving rise to conceit. He was able to tranquilize his energy, to put his energy into balance with concentration, and stop worrying about not attaining the destruction of the asavas. And then he directed his mind, or focused his mind, on the deathless element, which is nibbana. And then the text says that dwelling alone, withdrawn, ardent, and resolute, the Venerable Anuruddha soon realized for himself the destruction of the asavas, and then he became one of the arahats. Okay, so maybe we could take any questions on either of the 2 suttas with Anuruddha. What do you think about the sutta about women from a woman's perspective? Speak up. No, speak honestly. Don't just sit and smile. Drea? Yeah, take the wireless mic.
Yorong's laughing because I said I'm going to have to struggle to be polite and not use bad language. But it's just such a... It's so much in that old cultural context.
Yeah.
Where we're just, and not just Eastern culture, also Western culture. I mean, women have just been treated like the dregs of the earth, in older world cultures. And you know what? We're still not there yet.
Yeah,
It's a lot
yeah,
better, but
yeah.
we're not there yet.
Yeah.
And look, Buddhism is famous for, it seems like the only disciple who ever spoke up for women, according to the suttas, is, it seems like the only, disciple who ever spoke up,
A disciple, yeah.
was the Venerable Ananda.
Yeah.
And even then, he had to like poke and poke and poke and poke and poke and poke and poke at the Buddha.
And then he got
let
slapped
women in.
down at the first council, according to...
Yeah, so about a lot of frightened little men, and I'll just, really, and we don't know. I mean, you'd hate to think that the Buddha had those prejudices, and it could very easily be corrupted texts and just absolutely. But then again, if you really just, look. I'm trying to think, let's get it out of this context. If we go like to the New Testament, Jesus, yeah, he's pretty cool. And yet he never speaks against slavery. He never speaks against, there's still a cultural context.
Yeah.
Even with, I'm just trying to bring it out of Buddhism, so I don't want to offend people. But if you really just want to just take a really good hard look, maybe even enlightened masters aren't perfect. I don't know. I do think these things at night.
Yeah,
Anyway,
my opinion, it's a bit heretical from a traditionalist standpoint, but I'm afraid to say it, but even the Buddha could be influenced by the culture. And
there's also something, Bhante, and this is years and years ago that I read this. Because I've read a lot of suttas, but I don't have your memory for knowing where everything was. But this seems prejudice. He's talking, I can't remember who he was talking about, but it's about women, but he wasn't putting down women per se, but he was talking about that this woman was a dusky colored woman, which is not as superior as a light-skinned woman. And I think it was actually in the Anguttara somewhere, but this was like easily 10 years ago that I read this.
Dusky colored.
Yeah.
This I don't recall.
I'm going to have to go looking through my stuff, but I do remember, and I was thinking, well, golly, that's not cool.
But I think I know the sutta you're referring to, but I don't think it goes that way. Let me see if I could find it.
And I believe, Bhante, do you know that there was it's not the full translation of the Anguttara. It's an older book of yours. It's a paperback.
The anthology.
Yeah, I think, but I'm really, really straining up my memory because it was easily 10 years, 8-10 years ago.
Yeah, I think I could
could
find
be wrong.
I think the sutta you might be thinking of is Book of Sixes, number 44. Yeah, there's a woman named Migasala who makes a statement that sort of questions or even challenges a statement that the Buddha made. She doesn't make it to the Buddha, she makes it to Venerable Ananda. Then Venerable Ananda comes back to the Buddha and reports this. Again, don't throw the eggs at me, I'm just reading from the sutta. The Buddha says, who indeed is the female lay follower, Migasala, a foolish, incompetent woman with a woman's intellect? Is that the sutta you?
I know, it's not ringing a bell. I'll look. Let me just look.
Okay.
And I'll let you know next week if I can find it, because it was so long ago. It is possible I'm mixing something.
Yeah, that doesn't ring a bell to me.
Yeah, but I don't usually.
Please, if you would take this wireless mic. Yeah, right up here.
Thank you. Hi. So there are many words that are different, but I quickly want to pay attention to the words that are the same,
Yeah.
which is the mind that it's obsessed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, to me, the breakdown is just based on, you know, if we just remove the aspects of, you know, the cultural aspects, because that every culture will be different, but based on the sameness, based on, I perceive it more looking at that of the emotionality pieces when it comes to that being problematic, in comparison to that of being mindful in a situation, for that of the other rather than that of the self. And I think, you know, culturally, if you want to say, but just that emotional piece, when it comes to that, I think that's what keeps getting my attention more based on, where it's, we can go ahead and, you know, have our own emotions when we read this text and saying woman, male, culture, and all of these aspects. But I think on the sameness aspect, when it comes to us all having emotionality, that piece, I think, keeps grabbing my attention when it comes to that of the mind being obsessed of the self. You know, even if you're talking about the miserliness? Yeah.
The what? Miserliness. Yeah, yeah.
That of like just the aspect of, you know, quote unquote, not judging, but being stingy with that of of what you have. You're thinking about yourself in comparison, so you don't want to offer to help. And number two, in the aspect of saying that of envy, once again, of the self, you're saying that I don't have what that person has. Once again, looking at the self. And then the last, the sensual lust of being lonely, once again, myself, not considering that of the other, of what that person is doing outside of your possession. So, so that's what keeps coming into my aspects. And when I, you know, from my personal aspects, whenever I practice more of myself, rather than that of the other, I'm experiencing a lot of stress and therefore the hell, example. So that's what keeps coming up.
Yeah, okay, that's good, yeah. Yeah, but I want to get comments from the women.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not a woman.
Am I the only one who's not chicken?
Excuse me? Okay, let Allison's.
From when I'm reading it, and I think from logical point of view, it applies to all men and women. But from my personal experience, and as in education, in real life, I have found until today, in religion, in education, in workplace, it still exists. And
you mean
the things you're talking about,
the kind of biases or the kind of attitudes?
The way they expressed.
Yeah.
You know, he's talking about three qualities of this bad quality of woman.
Yeah.
And the way I look at it is, these monks, they're living in a very separate world.
Very
separate.
Yes. Yeah.
So, as the nature of a human being, is something they are not familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as like something they are not familiar with, immediately there is distinction, separation. So when they're talking about something they are not familiar with, same thing like we talk about Chinese food, the Greek food, or Chinese and the Greek and American. So we all have the tone of we are not familiar with. So the way that's how I read it. It's almost like they are curious. But at the same time, there's a fear, something about this species they don't know.
Well, I'm supposed to be the attorney defending a monasticism.
So,
did you want to?
Bhante, you know, coming on what you say,
it seems that prejudice against women still exists in Buddhism today.
Oh,
So this is
very, very
definitely
strong,
not
yeah. Very
you know,
strong,
an
yeah.
ancient ideal of women. So
Yeah.
maybe you would like to speak to that. How do you see that changing within Buddhism? How, you know, what would be the way in Theravadan Buddhism for women to have the same opportunities as men in terms of monasticism?
And there's still that whole ordination issue, isn't there? That never got resolved, correct?
That's right.
That whole big brouhaha.
Yeah, of course, that has been a big issue over the last few years. And okay, there are different Theravada Buddhist countries. The Sri Lankans, on the whole, have been much more, let's say, liberal and progressive in their attitudes, and that they have, at least a substantial number of Sri Lankan monks have found ways to open the doors for women to receive the full ordination. But even in Sri Lanka, let us say what's called the Mahanayaka Theros, those are like the heads of the different branches of the Sangha, still will not accept the validity of ordination for women. And Burma and Thailand are much more conservative. They entirely reject ordination for women. But I have to say that this is not necessarily based on a prejudice against women, but this is based on a way of reading the rules governing ordination in the Vinaya. This gets into, to explain this would require about at least 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, the rules for ordination of women require that the ordination, is traditionally understood, require that two branches of the Sangha conduct the ordination. The bhikkhunis, the nuns, give the ordination to a candidate first. Then the ordination has to be confirmed by a community of monks, of bhikkhus. Okay, what happened, maybe 11th century, is that the lineage of ordination for women died out in Sri Lanka. This was at a time before Theravada Buddhism was established in or at least before it was well established in Southeast Asia. So it died out in Sri Lanka, perhaps because there was a period when there were invasions from South India, a tumultuous period. In fact, the ordination for monks also had died out at one point. And once the ordination lineage dies out, according to this traditional way of understanding the Vinaya, there's no order of nuns to give the ordination. And so the order of monks can't give the ordination on their own in this traditional way of reading the procedure. Okay, now when the bhikkhuni order was first established by the Buddha, there were no bhikkhunis, of course, sort of. And so the question came up, posed by the monks to the Buddha, how are we to ordain these women as bhikkhunis? And then the Buddha said, I allow you monks to ordain women as bhikkhunis. And then he never abolished that allowance. Okay, so for the first, let's say the first generation or so of nuns, the first few years of nuns, the ordination of women as nuns, the monks were giving the ordination, till a point was reached where there were enough senior nuns to conduct the ordination, to constitute a branch of the Bhikkhuni Sangha that could conduct the ordination. And at that point, the Vinaya introduces the dual Sangha ordination. First, the woman is ordained through the Sangha of nuns, then the ordination is confirmed by the Sangha of monks. Okay, so through the years, that was the method for conducting the ordination. Two branches of the Sangha conduct the ordination together. Okay, now in modern times, when women started to request the revival of Bhikkhuni Sangha, there was no order of nuns in existence to conduct the ordination. And so some monks, what is that? Okay, this is, you're sort of anticipating me. Two sort of solutions were found. One was to bring in nuns from Korea or Taiwan to serve as the Bhikkhuni Sangha, and then they would give the initial ordination, then confirmed by the order of monks. The other was for the monks to refer back to that initial statement of the Buddha, I allow you monks to ordain women as bhikkhunis. And so what happened in 1998 in India, first a dual Sangha ordination was conducted in Bodh Gaya with monks from different schools, Taiwanese, Tibetan, Theravada, mainly Sri Lankans, serving as the Bhikkhu Sangha, and nuns from Taiwan serving as the Bhikkhuni Sangha. After that initial ordination was given, then the Sri Lankan monks took the Sri Lankan women, took them to Sarnath, and then conducted another ordination based on the statement in the Vinaya Pitaka, where the Buddha says, I allow you monks to ordain women as bhikkhunis. So that is the way in which the ordination has been revived in modern times. But as I said, there's a substantial number of Sri Lankan monks accept that method of reviving the Bhikkhuni Sangha. But the elder, more conservative monks don't accept it. In Sri Lanka and in Thailand and Burma, completely rejected. You were in Burma, so you saw that. But what they have in Burma is women who live as nuns, they just don't take the formal ordination. They call them tilashins in Burma. And in Thailand, they call them maichi. Yeah, in Burma, the women who take the ordination wear a kind of pink, I think it's a pink-colored robe with a brown sash. And in Thailand, they wear white robes, so they're just like, really like lay women living in the monastery. Okay, I think we have to break for the lunch. Okay, so we will have we could continue Q&A discussion, say 12:15. Wow, we got through without the